Hi, my name is Natalie Carice, and I'll be presenting this Pecha Kucha on Phillippe Diederich. Diederich is a Canadian American, but grew up in Mexico. He has become a famous author, and is best known for his books Playing for the Devil's Fire and Sofrito. Phillippe was born in the Dominican Republic, but because his parents were kicked out of Haiti by a dictator, Mexico City is the place in which Phillippe spent most of his childhood. Later on, he and his family moved to Florida. As Phillippe grew older, he pursued a photojournalism career. Because of this, he spent a lot of time in Cuba. This is reflected in one of his more famous pieces, Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Diederich's use of his life within his writing doesn't stop with that piece. Sofrito is one of his most well-known pieces, and he uses aspects of his life to represent many ideas in that book. Sofrito is about a Cuban American who returns to Cuba and finds out a lot about his family. This parallels quite closely with Diederich's life, given his past as a Canadian American. He said he chose to write about Cuba instead of Haiti because his own experience was too close to him and he couldn't accurately represent it with his writing. Another reason Phillippe chose to talk about Cuba in his book is because of the extensive amount of time that he spent there. One of the closest parallels seen from his real life to his book is the main character. Sofrito is about a guy who is exiled to the United States, just as he was exiled and had to move to Florida. One of the pieces by Diederich I mainly focused on was Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I thought this was a particularly interesting work of writing for many reasons. The first was just the way in which he talks about his time in Cuba. It really lets the reader experience what he was experiencing. The second thing I found particularly interesting about this book was how, out of all of the things he could have written about Cuba, he chose to write about motorcycles. I feel like this is something that could have been fairly insignificant, but he was able to make it into a great piece of writing. I definitely think the thing I liked most about this book is his use of pictures. I think this is one of the strongest things he could have done as a writer, given his history as a photojournalist. For him to be an author, yet incorporate his passion for photojournalism within the piece, was definitely a strong point for him. Another one of Felipe's pieces I looked at was The Widow of Calevertudes. Although this story was told in the perspective of a widowed woman, you can immediately see aspects of Phillippe Diederich within the writing. Several parts of the dialogue are spoken in Spanish, which is a primary language of Diederich. Of the pieces of writing I read by Diederich, this piece was probably my favorite. The story was captivating. Again, it was like you were there. He uses a great amount of descriptive writing, allowing for the reader to be fully engaged in what he has to say. After evaluating both The Widow of Calle Virtudes and Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, you can draw many similarities between the two. Even with the vast storyline differences he presents within the pieces. The main similarity I found between the two stories is the way in which Diederich writes. He includes specific details about the characters in his story so that you can practically see them. When he includes dialogue, it's usually concise and heartfelt. He concludes both pieces with one strong phrase, giving it the ability to wrap up the entire story. The biggest differences between the two books are the stories being told. While both stories take place in Cuba, the stories themselves are very different. Communism and the art of motorcycle maintenance is primarily told in first person, whereas The Widow of Calle Virtudes is told in the perspective of a woman. Even though the way in which both stories are presented are different, they both are very strong with many elements of Phillippe in them. The following photos are some of the ones Phillippe put in his book, Communism and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. These are all photos taken by Phillippe himself, such as this picture of a Harley Davidson made in Sergio's garage. In this photo, such intricate details are shown on this Harley Davidson fender emblem. It's an amazing photo taken by Diederich to show the hard work that was put into something so minuscule as an accurate representation of the hard work within the larger picture. Sergio is one of the main mechanics, and here we have a picture of his daughter sitting on a beautiful motorcycle made by her dad, talking to her future husband. This shows a sense of community around these motorcycles and how, one way or another, they've brought so many people together. This picture shows Fernando Perez grinding down a Harley Davidson sidecar. I think Diederich chose to include this photo to really give the viewer an idea of what hard work looks like in a town ridden with poverty. Phillippe Diederich now lives in Sarasota, Florida, and teaches photography and writing courses. According to his Rate My Professor page, his students have nothing but wonderful things to say about him. Phillippe Diederich is a very strong writer who has the ability to tell very interesting stories based upon his upbringing, travels, and photojournalism career. He has the ability to encompass every portion of his life and throw it into a story, and that's truly astonishing.